was a legal background to the treasure hunt, contrary to what we were told later on. And another batch with 1949, just to give you an idea of all the newspaper reports that went out in different newspapers in the UK, all being reported by Reuters news agency. Okay, and I give you snapshots because there's a lot of articles of the different articles that appeared. Like, for example, even people like Ian Fleming, who came out here to interview my father in 1958, I think it was, and it was reported about the articles that he wrote in the UK. I think he came out on behalf of the Daily Mail or something. And it was reported also in Le Seychellois. Another one is the 1968 article in a Swedish newspaper, Caller. The gentleman was one of the guys with the, when you were at Ethiopia, the Band-Aid or whatever it was called, when he was one of the organizers of that. He became a very important person afterwards.
Not Bob Geldof, no?
No, not Bob Geldof, but he worked with Bob Geldof, this chap. And then I have other Seychelles Bulletin papers that I've given you copies of, telling about what was done with the article I told you, the article that appeared in the Daily Telegraph. And now this was then reprinted in articles all over in Scandinavia, in Germany, in Holland, in South Africa, in Kenya, and Argosy magazine in the United States. And we will see afterwards when I read it that it reached like 50 million readers, even before the day of before the internet and everything. How it really, before the airport opened, how it really marketed the Seychelles. It marketed the Seychelles tourism industry. And agreement with Etchler, the German guy who got the contract with government in 1984, and the Daily Telegraph article that appeared about this, and also the site, the plan of the sites, the treasure sites, and other articles there. So, but I will start now with the with this letter to the President of Tuesday, 6 June 2017, concerning the Cruz-Wilkins expedition, 1977 to 1987. So I wrote, further to the copies of correspondence sent to you on Wednesday, 19th April 2017, I'm still waiting for the response of government because they never replied to any letters. MLUH, even State House, both of these letters, they never responded. May I remind you of a particular period of history of the treasure hunt in Bellon. In 1980, government frustrated the sale of land to Austrian acquisition and then used the acquisition as a tool to interfere in the activities of the expedition on the Cruz-Wilkins treasure site. In 1982, I had a meeting with Mr. George Payet. Even though in the letter I wrote, I simplified it. He was the principal, then he was not yet. He was the CEO of Seychelles Housing Development Corporation, SHDC. Later on, he became the PS. He told me, talk to us of any treasure site in Seychelles, except the treasure site in Bellon. He stated that with the acquisition, the Cruz-Wilkins expedition had lost all its rights to the treasure hunt and the site. We were ordered to stop all activities on site because we were still maintaining the pumps, repairing the sheds, bringing journalists around and all that. To shut down the expedition, or else we would have to face certain consequences, by which we understood it was legal consequences. At the time, we wondered what was behind government's action. Sometimes later, we learned that government was secretly negotiating with a German treasure hunter. If I remember correctly, it was in 1985. In fact, I checked the documents, his contract, it was 1984, in fact, instead of 89, that I received a phone call from someone acting on behalf of this German who requested a meeting with me
Excuse me,
Okay.
Julia. I think that is also it's not an original, no?
Okay, so I will keep on. If I remember correctly, it was in 1984 that I received a phone call from someone acting on behalf of this German, who requested a meeting with me at a tourism establishment further down the coast of Bellum. The German's name was Etchler, and it turned out that he did not want a meeting, but a confrontation. I was informed by him that the government was about to grant him a license to prospect the Cruz Wilkins excavation site. He called it this way because that's how it was known to the international media in those days, and that he did not want any interference from the Cruz Wilkins family. I was then threatened by him with these words: "I know that if necessary, your government can oppress you and your family." By then it was clear why Mr. Payet did not want to talk to us. Government had literally taken over the treasure hunt, and it was about to grant a license to another prospector by means of legal force. Now, before I go on with this letter, I would like to read something from there was a documentary that was made in '76 on the treasure hunt by a British company called Camera Alive Limited. And I gave you a copy, and on page, from page close, not closer, but number 62 of the scripts. Okay, you will find it. It's Camera Live Limited. Okay, and I will read. The PUP leader is interviewed, but actually is the Minister Philibert Loiseau of this PUP. And I will not read everything that he said, but only the last part because it's too long. He said, every now and again, you know, Cruz Wilkins goes checking that the pumps are working, but there's nothing to be done at present. And the sentence is ambiguous. It could mean that there was nothing we were doing, or there's nothing that they could do because they were not in power. Maybe he's trying to raise money from somewhere, but I don't think people are any more interested. It's been going on for too long, 26 years. And my father wrote in his own words, in red ink, a response to Mr. Loiseau: dirty and full of political nonsense, apart from being quite untrue. Also, this brings up the point, the defamation of my own character, which brings to mind the old Chinese proverb: what the superior man seeks is within himself. What the mean man seeks is within others. And he says there's nothing to be done at present, meaning they are out to steal my work, which means the treasure. So my father had foresight about what was going to happen, even in 1976. And in fact, Mankan had sent out Joubert, his minister, to warn my father that all his activities on the treasure site were being monitored by Mr. Rennie. All reports were being sent to Mr. Rennie. And they were even getting information from one or two of the laborers. So this deals with this. And at the same time, around the same time after, just before the acquisition of the land, the Seychelles police decided to search our house for weapons. Now I have, my father, when he came out, he had a mini arsenal because he was ex-military and he was a big game hunter in Kenya. He worked in Kenya from 1940 to 1949. And in fact, during the war, he shot game to supply, because to supply the Italian prisoners of war. There were 40,000 of them intern in Kenya, and he made a lot of money from this. And then after the war, he set up a transport company, transporting agricultural products around the whole of Eastern Africa. Okay, so I've also photocopied for you the letter from Mr. Oak, Chief Police Officer, where he says, I note you have licenses for 3 firearms, 8.303 rifle, 8.45 pistol, a Mauser automatic pistol. Okay, and then there's another one where the British police had taken all these weapons away from him, and they allowed him only the Mauser pistol, which they gave him the license back again in 25th, 11/72, application for firearm permit. Your application for a firearm permit for an automatic pistol has been approved, and this was for the Mauser. And in fact, in the Camera Live film documentary, he appears on it with this pistol, okay, because he was allowed to carry the pistol because of the treasure hunt and for security. And so, like somebody else asked once, all these weapons of my father cost a lot of money, especially the Mauser pistol, the machine pistol, is a pistol, a German pistol from the Second World War. And today on the market in the United States where guns are legal, it would fetch a lot of money. So I'd like to know what will be the policy of government about compensation for firearms that they took. A lot of weapons were taken from a lot of Sechua. I was talking also about the search. They came to search for the weapons, like I said. When my father died, it was 40 days before the coup d'etat, and a week later, Stone sent the CID officers and police from Beauvalon to come and collect the weapon, the Mauser machine pistol. But when they came a couple of years after the coup, they came searching. If they had checked their records, they would have seen all the weapons had been collected. And they came, and it was, I can name the police officer in charge of the search. It was Superintendent Inar, and the man actually in charge of the search beneath it was Sergeant Bayon. And the house was surrounded by PMU or whatever, and I was at work and I got a phone call that this was going on. They ransacked the house, and they found a couple of bullets that had been left we had not seen. My mother had to fill out a form, and the family was terrified and terrorized, really. So this was followed then now with the, like I said, with the acquisition and the rest that happened. Now, in May 1987, the lawyer who in 1949, his name was Mervyn Morgan, had come to Seychelles to draft the legal documents of the expedition, arrived here once more to assess the legal situation of the expedition. The conclusion reached was that it was purely and simply legal theft on the part of the government, for the expedition was a legal operation that had been officially recognized by previous governments. Like I said before, there was an agreement in 1949 between government, the Savvy family who owned the property, and the Dyer family who owned another property next door to them. And on the other side of on the right, if you face the sea to the north, you have in the middle you will have the Savvy property, which then became the Newlingwood property later on when it was bought by the Newlingwood family. On the left you will have the Dyer family, and on the right the Sherwin. I think they came here also for the Sherwin family. It adjoins, all these three properties adjoin each other then. So that's why they had to have an agreement with the Dyer family also in case the treasure, because there were demarcations and all that on the land. And there was another an agreement. This agreement expired after 2 years. Another agreement was signed with the government in 1954, this time with Governor Addis and also the Savvy family. The first document had been signed with, I think it was Selwyn Clark, who was the governor then. And in 1962, another agreement was signed with the Dyer family. for 3 months and renewable for another 3 months. And in 1971, an agreement was signed with Newling Ward for the treasure hunt. And all this is in the registrar's office. It's all on the transcription that I gave to you, the repertoire. It's all there. I forgot to put a copy of the Newling Ward, I can get it for you, in the documents. Now, if I go on with the letter, on top of that, the expedition hired and fired employees, paid wages and salaries, bought tools and equipment, bought building and engineering materials, bought fuel and spare parts, and so on. It spent much needed money in the economy and even became the first employer to double the pay of laborers in the country in 1949. Now, laborers, when my father came in 1949, when he started work in July 1949, were getting 17 rupees a month. And my father doubled their pay to 35 rupees. And he got the best laborers coming to work for him. The major plantation owners were very angry about this. They said he was disrupting the labor market. They signed a circular letter and told him to get off the island. My father refused because he was a British citizen and this was a British colony. And so he kept on with his treasure hunt. It also did what the colonial tourism authorities have been trying to do since the end of World War II, which I've just explained with all the different, how it was marketed by this treasure hunt. In fact, I'll read what the article in The Nation, or the bulletin then, it became The Nation afterwards. Seychelles story appears in America. 20 million Americans will read about Seychelles in an article by Lawrence Belling in the December issue of the famous magazine Argosy. Mr. Belling's story about Reginald Crusoe-Wilkins' search for the Labuse treasure points out the impending airport, the advent of tourism, and the opinion that Seychelles are the most beautiful islands in the world. The article, which originally appeared in the Daily Telegraph magazine in London, has also been sold to 4 Scandinavian publications, a newspaper in Holland, a South African magazine, and has recently appeared in the Daily Nation in Kenya. Sales to Italy, Canada, and Australia are imminent. It is estimated that by April of next year, the article would have been seen by over 50 million people. So that was the marketing. Now, this was done for the treasure hunt, but what happened was that it was a perfect storm of circumstances. A pirate papers, a treasure hunt, a treasure hunter, a professional writer, a professional photographer, and contacts with other magazines, and then the domino effect of it appearing in all the magazines. And that was in 71 and 72 and all. And in 70, 71, by the time the airport opened in 71, we had thousands of tourists visiting the site in Bellon. And they all told my father we were going to the Caribbean or elsewhere, but because we thought the treasure hunt story was romantic, we decided to come to the Seychelles instead. And so Seychelles got free publicity for its tourism economy. And one day Mr. Mankan was speaking on the radio and said, I put Seychelles on the tourism map of the world. And my father turned around smiling and told me, I put it on the world map for him. I did it for him. And so, because Mr. Mankan also used some of the contacts of my father with the journalists. And in fact, the Swedish guy brought Mankan around for 1 week. The guy who wrote the article that I told you about, Poulsen. Now, to keep on with the letter, as the new landowner, government was already entitled to 50% of the treasure, because this is the civil code, the clause in the article in the civil code. In fact, they just discussed it last week in the assembly when they were working on the civil code. As the previous landowners had been, if government had wanted to be a partner in the prospection, it should have invested like any other investor. It should have bought into the treasure hunt, as they say, and not use questionable means to take over a legal operation to recover buried pirate treasure. If it had wanted to take over, it should have shown goodwill, just like in the takeover of any business unit, even of the simplest sort. And a lot of French journalists who visit the site speak to me when I explain to them the setup my father had. He says, oh, but this is, in French law, in France, this is what we call an informal company. Okay, so that's possible. But now, what was the financial cost to the expedition? It lost thousands of pounds sterling in abandoned equipment, like Lister engines and all that on site. A lot of them can still be seen on site today. Mr. Kiyu has been there, has seen it. You've seen it, or you visited the site. And professionals in different fields estimate that today it will cost around 1 million rupees. Now it's more like 2 million, 3 million now, because this estimation was done before the devaluation of the rupee in 2008, to build the walling and other structures on site. Tens of millions of rupees to carry out the treasure hunt that was undertaken between 1949 and 1977. And there are various estimates. Some people have put it as high as 35 million. I don't know. Different factors have been used. Even the World Bank average inflation rate and all that. So then the request I made to the President, so based on the above history, may I please request that as far as it is practicably possible, that your government reverse the decisions of 1980 to 1982, and that it does what is right in this situation by restoring justice to it. And therefore, it will be much appreciated if government considers restoring the rights of the expedition to the treasure hunt, to the treasure site, as well as restoring the rights of the Cruz Wilkins family in this and other matters. Now, a couple of months later, I met a member, came up and talked to me, a member of the National Assembly, a US member. I won't mention the name. And he said to me, I think your family deserves compensation. I said, why do you say that? I said, have you seen my papers? He said, yes. And I said, but if he said our case is authentic, genuine. But I said, if this is the case, why has not government done anything about it? He says, to tell you frankly or sincerely, I think they don't know how to handle your case. This is what this member of the Assembly on the government side told me a few months ago. So I don't know if I've handled everything. Yes, one other thing. All these, the rights to the treasure hunt, even though the PS was telling me, you've lost all the rights. Actually, in my father's will, in 1967, the rights to the treasure hunt are given in clause, you've got it there, I've given it to you, in clause 6, clause 8, and clause 12. And this is registered, all about the rights to the treasure hunt. And also, I will explain as wills. Let me get the paper. The actual. Okay, this is a letter of, the will could not be proved in the Seychelles court because Vallabhji actually wrote to my father's lawyers after his death. He was our lawyer, he also. Says, under our law, wills are not proved at the Supreme Court in Seychelles. There is no probate or letters of administration. So this had to be done in Kenya. And by 2nd June 1981, this had been done. And we received a letter from the lawyers, Hamilton, Harrison, and Matthews. We are pleased to inform you that we have now obtained the grant of letters of administration with the will annex, a certified copy of which is sent herewith. So the will was actually had to be proven in the court in Kenya, okay, because of the legal setup here. And it was only then that we could withdraw money belonging to my father in Kenya and Jersey, and we needed it had to be done overseas. So there is so when Mr. Payet was saying it was not true what government said. So there was a legal basis, the will, the all the different agreements with the government, with the landowner. Just like Mervyn Morgan, the lawyer, told me, this is a legal theft, and it had been officially recognized by previous governments. So, ma'am, I'll stop here for today.
But
Unless
is there somebody else that has the right to look for the treasure? Did the government sell it to somebody else? Or
no, I will.
no?
I stopped at 1986 because of your test of admissibility. But I can give you here no, because then we had to from then on. And the advice I was given by Mr. Morgan was that I have to seek a license on my own now, and which I did with a group of Americans. That's what we did. And I have it, and I'll tell you, the first agreement of '84 was with Etchler. Then I had partnership with an American in '88 for 2 years. Then we were stopped because there were some guys on a mountain overlooking Belhomme at Mordor, Maocochon, who said they had found markings, they had found inkpot or whatever, you know about it, Mr. Kiyu. The papers led them down to Belhomme, and they came. They got a permission by government, excavated on the boundary line between the government property and the Dyer property. Okay, and they were given it for 3 months and renewed, and then for 10 weeks, making a total of 8 months and 2 weeks. And when they had finished, we came back in for another 2 years. But then I had a problem with the Americans. We had a disagreement. And we broke up the partnership. And he went in and he got 2 years, renewed for 1 year, then a further year, making a total of, I'll give you this afterwards, a total of 4 years. And later on, in April 2000, I was given only 1 year, renewed for 1 year, extended for 11 weeks, making a total of 2 years and 11 weeks. Then the Americans came back in again with another company for 2 years in 2002. And in March 2007, I was given 2 years and renewed for 2 years by government. In January 2012, the Americans were supposedly given a 3-year with a right automatically to renew for the 2 years. But they did a couple of months and they left. They never returned. And I was given a draft agreement, which I will speak about when I come now, the next session, and the current situation.
Mm-hmm. So it has been a long time looking for this treasure.
Yes.
Are you sure there's any treasure? It seems a long time to look for treasure.
Well, do you want me to tell you? Because I don't know. You want me to tell you something about the treasure?
Yes.
What this is all about?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so my father came out here in 1949 on a holiday. And the cleaning lady that cleaned out the bungalow invited him over to her husband, Captain Goldvog, who was a Norwegian skipper, ex-Norwegian skipper. He had one leg, just like a character out of a pirate movie, with a wooden leg. And every night when he came over, this guy was working on something. Later on, it turned out it was a cryptogram. And then he invited him to meet Mrs. Savvy. And where my father was staying was where the Savoy Hotel is now. And Mrs. Savvy was staying where, not in Belhomme anymore, where the coral strand was, somewhere there. And he was introduced to Mrs. Savvy. And in those days, people had their coffin made when they were old, in case they died. And Mrs. Savvy had a maid go and open the coffin, and there was the documents that she had. And she got my father interested. To him, it was just a joke. All this was a joke. He was not interested. But she got him interested. He found some demarcations further, and he bought the documents for 400 rupees, which was quite a sum of money when you think a laborer was getting 17 rupees in Seychelles then. And he went back to Kenya. He was ill when he was here, but he went back to Kenya. In those days, you could only get a BI every three. There was ships like Karanja, Kampala, and all that every 3 months, and it linked Mombasa through Seychelles with Mumbai, and so you had almost nothing to do except from the sea and fishing and all that. So he went back to Kenya. Sometimes took about 18 months, and a bunch of documents. He managed to break them down, get a working interpretation. But there were different aspects of it. The only way you would know will be actually working the site. And he came back and he did that because, and all the documents were talking about a certain woman in the water. And after 2-3 years, he found the woman, which he presumed was Andromeda. Okay? Now, the Savi family, the Savi family were connected to the National family through marriage. And how did the papers come into the possession of Mrs. Savi? And it seems that she got the documents from the national relatives of theirs, because one of her daughters had married into the national family, and he was a notary. And they discovered, when she discovered the site, demarcations on the site in 1923, they also, searching their papers, found the pirate papers. And there had been a lot of treasure hunt in Mauritius, and Bitin Argent de l'État is well known. The treasure of Bitin Argent de l'État is well known. The bishop is shaking his head because he knows about it in Mauritius. And these documents, Bitin was also a pirate. But the papers of Olivier Levasseur, the pirate whose treasure we're searching for, got, I don't know, mixed up with the papers of Bitin. And all the papers were together. And in some papers, Bitin talked about 4 treasures at one point. One in Rodriguez Island, one in Mauritius, one on the coast of Mozambique, one in the Seychelles. And all the marks had the markings BN by coincidence, which was his name. But he was searching for the treasure that had belonged to a group of the Pirate Brotherhood. It was not Bitin who had placed the treasures. It was the treasures of the Pirate Brotherhood. It seems that even the pirates, the later pirates, were searching for the treasure of the Pirate Brotherhood that they knew. Several treasures had been buried around the Indian Ocean. And even the French corsairs afterwards tried to do that. And so, anyhow, it's a long story. Finally, it came...
But you're confident?
Yes,
we are. You will find treasure?
Yes.
And what do you think? What sort of treasure? Will it be gold coins or...?
Well, what we have on the records, it's the famous, well, we don't know if this exists, the famous cross of Goa, which was a solid gold cross with precious stones encrusted on it, like diamonds, sapphires, rubies. And in fact, they say this is, if it exists, if it's found, it took 3 strong men to carry. If it's found, it will be even priceless. Even though they were saying the treasure is around 100 million pounds, it might be priceless, they say, if it does exist. And each pirate in the group, the lowest pirate had 42 diamonds as his share and 5,000 gold coins. So it was a vast treasure. And in fact, one historian described it as an answer to a pirate's prayer. And they had taken the ship. It was off the ship, the Portuguese ship, the Virgin do Cabo. It was taken in the bay in St. Paul, in Réunion, because it had been through a storm. It had thrown most of its cannon overboard. The captain had ordered most of the cannons to be thrown overboard, and most of the crew were ashore. And the pirates sailed in, flying British colours. And then when they came closer, they pulled it down, and then up went the pirate flag. And they came with leeward and starboard of her, and they gave her a broadside, and then they landed men on the decks. The classic pirate story. And they took the treasure, and they even invited themselves ashore to dine with the French governor of the island. It was still a young colony. And the French were trading with the pirates. A lot of the people in Réunion are descended from pirates. Each time a pirate ship came into Réunion, they unloaded a group of pirates, French, Dutch, Danish, English. The people of Réunion are from they're descended from all the countries of Europe.
Has anyone found treasures on Réunion?
People have found treasure in Réunion. People have found treasure secretly in Mauritius. Treasures have even been found in Seychelles and recorded, as you know, in the 1916, the treasure that was found on, I think, Astov Island, and all documented. And then the later governor, when he wanted to see the treasure, it was gone. Somebody had pirated it away. So we have even modern day pirates, even working in government or whatever. But basically, this is how the treasure hunt came about. And so in the case of my father, he thought I'll spend a few, maybe up to £2,000 and have a go at this. But then, like they said, the gold bug beat him, and he stayed, except for a couple of trips back to Kenya. Because when he ran out of money in the late 1950s, he financed this all by himself. He went back to Kenya and he gave lectures and he raised funds. A lot of people, because the stock market in Kenya was bullish. It was there's a lot of money being made, and the people put in money to see. I mean, they shared the cost of it, and for a part of the treasure if it was found. But then, of course, after Kenya got independence, all the Brits had left, and there was no further funding from Kenya. And the funding that came was from the UK when the airport opened, some funding from the UK. Because the treasure hunt in the end was never properly funded. The kind of money that was needed to do the engineering operation that it needs to be done. Costain was asking £40,000. They had all the equipment, they could do the operation, but they wanted £40,000 to do it.
Exciting. It'd be exciting if you found the big cross. 3 men to carry.
I was just asking about the letter saying rent. We have a copy the letter from the president?
Yeah, we have. I gave you all these letters.
We haven't.
All the correspondence I gave you. I think your staff are saying maybe I'm giving you too many.
No, we never said that.
Photocopied, and
No.
if you need more, I can give you more.
Yeah.
What I have, if you miss any.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it is fascinating. But I have here what appears to be the originals.
Seems that she has not got the chance to make copies of these.
Well, then they need to be copied so they can
that's
go
right.
back. All right. Okay.
That's where
All
I'm
right.
asking.
Okay.
Okay.
So, any more questions?
So we have no further questions on this aspect of your case. We will see you again for the 3rd chapter in closed session. So we will look and see if we can find a space on the calendar for the next sitting to get that in. So the next sitting starts on the 30th of March for 2 weeks. So we'll look for a space in there if that would meet with your agreement. 30th of March, our next sitting for the final part of your
30th of March. Okay.
yeah. Well, that week.
Yeah, start-
From
Oh, that week.
Yeah, that
Start-
week or
starting.
the following week. We'll look on the calendar and find a
Okay.
spot and put you in so that we can hear the final part in closed session. But thank you very much. It's very interesting. We look forward to reading all the documents. They sound very interesting. But you've inspired me more. I now have a bit more belief in the treasure hunt, but it just seems to take so many years.
Thank you for your comments, Madam and Madam Chairperson. Thank you also, all the members. Thank you for having me once more and hearing out the case.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we will adjourn now and we will return in closed session.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. What time?